here we're talking about why your job is not doing your job in media buying anymore. What do we mean by this? What are we getting at? It's a cute little title, Kasim, which you and I hatched up pre-record. But what does it actually mean? Let's maybe talk about on the Google side how things have changed, especially in the last year for Google media buyers, like Performance Max in particular. How has media buying changed literally in the last year, probably more so than any other time in our history?
Two things, if you don't mind. The first is an analogy, and then the second is a story. Sometimes examples are helpful. So the analogy that I use in my keynote is media buying used to be driving a Formula One race car. And when you're driving a Formula One race car, you're flying down the road at 300 miles an hour or whatever, and you're making dozens of decisions every second, right? Like you are driving, you're in control, and you're tweaking and moving, and you've got knobs and levers and pulleys and whatever. You're driving. Well, because machine learning and AI have found their event horizon, we've moved from Formula One race car driving to interstellar space travel at the speed of light. And there's a big difference between driving a Formula One race car and driving a spaceship at the speed of light, which is you actually don't get to drive the spaceship. You get to tell it where to go. You service the spaceship, but you're not driving. And for someone who's used to driving, they just don't understand that. But if you try to tweak the spaceship, we all die, right? Like one hair, 1 millimeter, 1 degree off, and you're either landing in the wrong solar system or you're just dead. So that's the analogy. Here's the example. We have a client who we hadn't made a change in their account for 7 months. 7 months.
7 months.
It's insane, Ralph. When you think about it, we're talking about a system of we're talking about a type of work that used to have dozens of changes a day. And we end up with this client. We haven't made a single change in their account for 7 months. Now, we've done other things, right? There's on-site recommendations. There's feed optimizations. There's, work that can be done on the periphery. But we hadn't made any changes inside the Google account for 7 months. So we get to the end of the road for the things that we could do outside of Google. And inside the app, it was like, man, there's actually really nothing for us to do here. It's scaling adequately. They're in a really tight niche, and so there was nowhere for us to go beyond what was being made available. It was as efficient as it was going to get. We did our job basically, and you never want to work yourself out of a job, but sometimes it's bittersweet. But it's a nice thing to be able to come to the client and be like, hey, our work here is done. And it was such an awkward conversation because we came to him and said, look, we haven't made any changes in the last 7 months. Everything that we wanted to do offsite and with your feed is done. There's really nothing left for us to do. And then the client asked what I thought was a really intelligent question. He goes, well, should somebody still watch it? And we were like, yeah, probably. Like, things change, markets change, technology changes. So yeah, you should still have somebody monitor it. But we don't have any changes to make. And he goes, well, who should I have monitor that? And the answer was, well, probably somebody who knows Google Ads. And he was like, all right, well, I mean, like hiring somebody in-house is going to be expensive. Doesn't it make sense for me to continue to have you guys monitor our account? And we were like, I mean, as long as we're on the same page as far as what it is that we're doing here. But it was interesting, and it's always fun when the client turns it around on you and helps you see your own value proposition. Because I thought my value proposition was tweaking, and it wasn't. And he showed that plainly. He's like, look, dude, I just want you to worry. As long as you're looking at things on a regular basis and you are worrying about my account, then I think we'll be in good shape. Now, that account really is an anomaly. Out of 200 clients, I have one like that. But every single client, we're seeing a massive diminishment. Is that a word, Ralph? Diminishment?
It
Feels
is now.
good. Yeah.
I
We're
like
seeing a massive drops in the amount of changes, updates, tweaks that accounts need. And not just in Performance Max, not just in DSA, not just in machine learning driven accounts. Google's optimization is getting better. And so what the media buyer needs to do on a daily basis, and this is where things get really interesting, is if you've got a real proactive media buyer, they're going to kill your campaigns. If you tweak before the machine has the opportunity to learn, every change you make resets learning for the most part. You might be able to do some mild bid and budget adjustments, but every major change you make resets learning. And when you reset learning in a machine learning tool, you're not getting liftoff. And this is especially important for in-house teams because agencies can sell this narrative the way that I just sold it to you. But for CMOs and director of marketing, for your direct reports, very often what I see is the KPI, and it was a reasonable KPI, by the way, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but it's show me what you've done in the account, right? Because we can't necessarily measure performance in the short term, obviously. So what changes, updates, optimizations have you made? And if that's the way you're managing your people, you are asking them to ruin things. It's like hiring a stockbroker and saying, hey, Ralph, here's the money I need you to manage. I'm going to need you to make 10 trades a day. And now this poor fool, it's like, well, dude, things are down. I don't know that I want to necessarily sell while it's down, because then we lose money, but you're forcing them into, so I had to sell today while everything was down, and tomorrow it's all going to spike, and I'm going to have to buy tomorrow because I have the 10 trade a day mandate. And that's where everybody is. So in a really interesting twist of fate, the new job now is knowing when not to work, which is most of the time. And the day trader's a really good analogy. Most of the time, good traders aren't trading. I forgot, I'm going to get this wrong, but I'm going to get the gist right. Something like 80% of Warren Buffett's net worth came from 2 trades. Or have you heard that? Something along those. It was in his biography, Snowball. Yep. So or the majority or whatever came from like a very minimum number of trades. And media buying is turning into something very, very similar. And if you're a client employing an agency, make sure you have the same expectations. Everybody needs to change their paradigm. The agency, the in-house team, the end clients, the freelancers, be real careful about running around doing stuff just for the sake of it, because you're not justifying your existence. You're actually doing the opposite.
Why is it that media buyers have an issue with this? And I'm not talking just about Google. We can talk about the meta side as well. And I've got a couple of examples there. But what is it? Is it substantiation of the job? Is it psychological? Is it emotional? Is it what is it in your opinion?
I think it's all of the above. I think, people want to work, right? You pay me to do something and I want to feel good about having done it. So I think that there's a pre-existing establishment of what it means to participate in that particular exchange of services, that trade. It used to be, hey, you give me money and I do this work. And now it's you give me money and I watch and see whether or not work needs to be done. And so it's a paradigm shift. And there are other industries that have taken to that just fine. But because we're in the grooves that we're in, it's hard to get out of those ruts. So I think that's one piece. I think people want to be able to justify their existence. And, if I ask you, what have you done today? Dude, even when I'm busy, when I've just been working myself to whatever, working my fingers to a nub, and somebody comes in and says, hey, what have you been done today? I'm like, oh, whoa, and then you look at your calendar and task list and your sent emails and you start trying to justify yourself. And the person's question was probably innocuous. It was probably benign, but for whatever reason, I think we all have those insecurities. And so take those insecurities and then amplify them by the fact that you actually not only didn't do anything today, but you shouldn't be doing anything today. And I also think it speaks to the forced obsolescence that's on the horizon, on a long enough timeline. And this, I'm sorry to be saying what I'm saying. On a long enough timeline, this problem exacerbates itself in direct proportion to the improved efficiency of these machine learning mechanisms. So does
Mhm.
that mean you won't need media buyers? No. That just means less media buyers can handle more accounts.
Mhm.
And it sucks to be on the receiving end of that efficiency. You know what I mean? For the clients or even sometimes for the agencies, like if you're on the right end of the fulcrum, if you're on the input end of the fulcrum, it's great for you. You have increased leverage. If you're on the output end of the fulcrum, it sucks for you. Because the thing that, it was like, well, man, I used to get paid X to handle 20 accounts. And now I'm getting paid half of X to handle 50 accounts. And I can only see that getting worse. Um, so I understand why the end user, the tactician, or the technician, I should say, is hesitant to opt into this narrative. But it's just what it is, man. It's the fact.